All right, here we are. I'm here with my father-in-law, Mark Boyer. So I'm pretty excited about this conversation. I respect him tremendously and uh, want to know. He's been through it. Former NFL player, played at USC, played for the Jets and the Colts. Edison High School, grew up in Huntington Beach. Has five children, all whom were great athletes, different sports. So just has a lot of perspective and insight and wisdom to offer. And so we're going to dive into a little bit about his journey as an athlete, and then kind of go from there. So, how you doing, Dad? Doing all right?
All right. Way to go, Josh. Thanks, man. You forgot to say how old I am. I'm like 61. I'm really old. So maybe
That's
that's why
young.
maybe I got some wisdom and a lot of white hair. But yeah, no, I'm excited. Thanks for inviting me on to this today and looking forward to speaking with you.
Perfect. All right, well, let's start off. Just tell us about like your journey as an athlete, as a kid. Obviously, when you were growing up, it's definitely a different landscape than youth sports today. So, as a kid, did you play organized sports? I'm thinking like middle school, like elementary, middle school,
Oh man, you're
organized
going back.
sports.
All right.
Play a lot with your brothers, neighborhood kids. What was that like?
Yeah, so grew up in Los Angeles, a little town called Maywood, which is sort of down by East LA. I'm the youngest of six children. I almost said five, but that's how many kids I have. But yeah, the youngest is six. I had three older sisters. There was three girls and then three boys. So and I'm 6 years. So John and Paul were my two brothers, closest in age to me. But John was 8 years older and Paul was 6 years older than me. So I was kind of a I was what we'd call a mistake, like a surprise, right? My parents always had a bunch of kids, and then I showed up. Born in '62, so I was born in the early '60s, and I mean, from an early age, I just what I can remember. My family was very active. My dad was a truck driver. My mom, um, she had grown up. Well, that's what he did for work. And then they had both. My dad had played football when he was a kid, and through at Bell High School, which is where a lot of my siblings went to school back in those days. And but my dad was a really good all city running back, and that played at Bell way back in the early '40s, and then
I didn't know
he
that.
was drafted into the World War II. When World War II hit, him and my mom, who they were high school, they met each other in high school. But they all, as that generation did, they all went off to fight in the war. My dad got a scholarship when he came back. No, actually, before he left, I'm sorry, he graduated from Bell and was actually on scholarship at SLO, San Luis Obispo, to play football. And then the war hit, and that's when they kind of him and so many they all went off to fight.
Yeah,
He was in the Navy. So anyway, so when I grew up, my earliest days, my parents were very active. My mom was an athlete as well, and and then I just remember at early ages, playing football out in the front yard with my two older brothers. It was kind of funny because I think they were kind of in at that time middle school to eighth grade, and my oldest brother John was kind of getting into junior high, high school, and they were going off and playing on some teams at their school, and then and you probably know what this is like because you're the youngest of three boys too,
yeah.
right? And so the older boys come back and they kind of like practice on their little brother.
I
So
remember, yeah, I remember my oldest brother Adam when he first got his pads, and I had pad. We had these like little kid Christmas present like pads, and my brother
yeah,
got real pads from when he started playing football, and we did one-on-one tackling drills in the backyard, and he was 4 years older than me, so I got
right.
wrecked.
That's just what happens. You're a young kid. You're the youngest, and they come home and start practicing on you. So mine was even. I'll call you on that. Plus, even maybe step up for you. Right. My brothers, we had this house that we had a narrow hallway that from the front of the house to the back where the bedrooms were. I remember to me, it seemed like it was a long ways, but it was like a narrow little hallway with, cabinets on the side where mom put the towels and stuff. And in this little hallway, my older brother John and my brother Paul, they would get down like on all fours with their helmet, with their pads and stuff. And I don't remember if we wore pads, but I just remember they would try to block. John liked to play defense, so Paul would
Yeah.
try to block him. I had to go behind Paul. They would give me a football, and I had to try to get over past John and score. And then literally it's 3.5 feet wide, right? So then John would just, and Paul
Steve,
both, because they would switch. I just remember they would practice their big hits on me. So
and
so it
you
was
meant
like it was almost at the verge of abuse, but it was fun, dude. Like I couldn't wait to do it. I couldn't wait to be a part of that all the time. So football was growing up. My dad um, and my family really were USC Trojan fans. So even in the late '60s, I started going to SC games. And going to the Coliseum, much like you do now with you took Trenton recently to the UW. Those are so big because as a kid, like I walked in that Coliseum. I remember going down the tunnel, coming out, and just seeing the field. And I mean, my vision of what all that was just so fun in the late '60s, '70s, back in those days. So and then my brothers were playing football. So I just grew up on
yeah.
football, and then we also we had our house, we had a basketball court. So off of detached garage. So we have a really nice. It was kind of a sweet deal. We had this on the garage front, big driveway. We were able to play basketball. So same kind of thing. I spent every day come home from school. It was like basketball, working on my dribbling. I just was, I just love sports. I mean, really the only I wasn't into track because I was slow as I grew up, and I wasn't. I never really played baseball. I mean, I played a little softball, in a grade school thing, but I never. Family just wasn't into baseball, and I kind of regret that a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was mostly basketball and football for me. So yeah, just with the older family. Yeah, I just love sports, man. I couldn't wait, to yeah. I mean, this is another. So in my day, the big football game. Now they do Madden, right? You got the
Yeah.
Madden game. In
Uh-huh.
my day, it was electric football, and this is how old I am. So it was like the big Christmas present when I was like 8 years old, was to get. They had these electric football. Do you ever see them?
Is that where they like shake?
Yeah. So
And
like it was a little. It was like this 3x2 thing that you would put down, and then you had these little plastic pieces, and you would set them up to run plays, and it was this little white little I don't even know what it was made of, but it was anybody's old like me remembers. But like you would set up these plays, and you would set them up to where the blockers would open a play, and then because when you turned it on, you set every offense and defense up, or you go against somebody else would play. Your buddy would set up the defense, you'd set up the offense, and then you'd hit the button, and everything would vibrate. And it would vibrate, and you would try to score. Anyway, that was like I'd play that all the time. So I was kind of a kook, but and then yeah, so that was fun, and I just grew up on that. So when I was in a um, small school that we from kindergarten to eighth grade, little Redeemer Lutheran in Southgate, and they had sports there. So at fifth grade, fifth, sixth, you could start playing football. We had a flag football team and a and a basketball team, and that's where I played a little bit of baseball, but that. So I was involved in those sports,
now,
and
when
those
you
were fun.
first started, did you feel like so if you just start, you're like itching to get out there and
Oh
haven't really played much organized sports, but did you feel like when you first started where you're like I got these guys like, you don't know what I've been through with my brothers, like I'm pretty good. Or was it a awakening? Did you feel like you had some skill when you
yeah,
first started?
yeah. I think I was. I think because of my having older brothers, and they taught me how to run routes in the front. I mean, again, everything was. My brother would say, "Hey, Mark, go." On my chest, he would say, "Go down and out," and we would play. Out in the any kind of grass we could find, and again, so yeah, I felt like I was pretty good. I could throw the ball, I could catch it, and yeah, so I always felt pretty comfortable playing sports, and I was pretty. I'm not a little guy now. I mean, I got to 6'5". I've shrunk now a little bit, but I'm probably 6'4". But I'm, so I was always tall and kind of tall for my age. I was skinny but taller than most of the other kids. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I always wanted to play quarterback or sort of be the point guard and the shooting guy, right? That made all
Yeah.
the, that I was very comfortable in that role and enjoyed it. So it was fun.
That's great. And then I remember so like when you were a kid, we've talked about this a lot, and I actually really like the phrase, or like these kids when you walked into the Coliseum, it's like kids gotta, like, dreaming is super important, and you feel like that is really a driving factor
Huge.
in development. I
Yeah.
actually, you said that, I'm like, that's super good.
Yeah. So I think for any athlete, you got to have vision. You
Mhm.
got to, and what I mean by that is you got to have an imagination or something to see that's bigger than you. And, and it doesn't have to be in sports, but that's sort of our focus today. I mean, I think for a young person to be able to experience or see things at at a higher level is really important to them. You and I had a conversation once around um, Friday Night Lights, and that's one of the big programs now. In our day and age, where these kids are playing
Mhm.
flag football, which is great, and they're playing on Friday nights, and it's sounds great and it's fun. But for me, I thought and that's great. But the negative to it is that those same kids aren't ever going to a local high school game, at a local, a big game, to go see what the high school kids are doing, right? So,
Yeah.
so they're seeing things on TV and pros in college, but they're not seeing like the next level. So to me, I don't think it's, I'm concerned about that because they never get a chance to kind of see because for me, when I used to go to these Bell High School games when watching my brothers play, dude, and it was like, I couldn't wait till Friday night to go watch them
Yeah.
play because, and you're probably the same way. It's just like, wow,
Yeah.
so you watch it
Totally.
and they seem so big and I look back and they were so skinny, as they were
I
just
know.
kids. But
I think that's
when you're 6 years younger, it seems like it's just like, wow, I can't wait to get there. And, what does it take? I'll do
yeah.
whatever. Right.
I remember because my dad was a high school coach, and so I'd go to like all the practices and just, like, play with the pads and throw the ball around and find anybody that would play
Yeah.
catch with me and stuff. And I'd go to the games and I'd be on the sidelines. And I remember I used to think, like, how am I ever going to take a hit from, like, they were so, like, I thought the hits were just like insane. Like, I thought they were so big. But the funniest part is like the size of the high school had total students like 130, and it was the smallest level of football you could find in the state of Washington. So it was so small, but even to me then, I thought it was like
Yeah.
crazy. And the same thing, I couldn't. And I think I remember a couple things that stuck out to me were like some of the players would say, because I'd always be around, and they would run wind sprints, and I would like try to race next to them to see if I was like at like close. And sometimes I would like kind of be in the group a little bit off to the side. And I remember someone saying, like, this is like the power of influence of like someone older, was like, wow, you're running fast. They're probably just like,
Yeah. Be
gassing me
nice.
up, like, wow, you're really fast. Like, it's gonna be wild or something when you get to play. Just,
Yeah.
and I just remember, like, whoa, like, they actually think I'm fast. Like, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how stuff like that pops in your head when you're little, and it can like really push you and
Yeah.
elevate you and lift you up to like to accomplish probably more than you would think. So you get that like vision that you're talking about of like
Yeah.
dreaming of like what it would be like.
Yeah, and I think as younger son, younger siblings, you and I both. I mean, you had the advantage. You're watching your brothers go through
Yeah.
things, and you're
Mhm.
and you're learning from their successes, and maybe seeing their failures too, where they're sort of blazing the way, on their end is in these sports and stuff. And so yeah, it's there's a lot of advantages to being a younger, but and also again, just like you said, just being able to hang out, like that reminds me, one time same that there was a rainy day one time. Remember when we were young and there was a day that was raining? We had a pretty decent sized backyard, and I remember my brothers they organized some of their teammates to come over and play in the back in the mud in the rain.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
my dream was that somebody would ask me to play, like I could play with them because they were so much bigger. And I think I got in a few plays, dude, and that was just like so fun to play with the older kids. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So to your original question, I think just being able to experience and have something to shoot for and look at, sort of your vision of where you're trying to go is really helpful. And I think what you do, I mean, you've been doing this, and again, it's props to you with what you're doing with Trenton, your son, who's going to be what 13 years soon, right? I mean,
Mhm. Yeah.
you've taken him to the Coliseum. You've taken him to you do a good job of really. My opinion, getting out and going seeing some things. You just recently went to the UW game, the Pac-12 championship just this last weekend. I mean, that's huge. I mean, I don't, and I know you don't. You're just trying to enjoy. You're enjoying that process and his
Yeah.
growing up. You're not
Yeah.
trying to push anything, but I just know, just telling you, like when I'm hanging out with Trenton, he's talking about that stuff. Like I could just
Yeah.
tell, like he just reminds me so much of just where I was at the same age. So it's really good to do.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Um, as far as like, so that's a little bit of the mentality and like the dreaming that we're talking about. Were there any like, because obviously as you get older, you have to have some skills, right? Like you got to be able to catch the ball, you got to be able to throw it, you got to be somewhat athletic. Is there any things that pop out to you that maybe nowadays? Because I have some thoughts around this too, but like nowadays. Um, there's a lot more like working with a trainer, a private trainer nowadays, and there's it's so structured, and like I don't think there's like very much like free play and like just pick up games and just throwing the ball around with your friends. And like I think a lot of those things personally develop a lot of these skills in different scenarios and keep the fun in it. But like you also learn to catch, that like I said, I was at practice just finding anybody to play catch with
No.
and just different things like that. So, you know, I don't know if I mentioned it on here, but you had over 170 receptions in the NFL. So obviously you could catch. Um, and you were also a quarterback, and like so you had all these different types of skills. And like, were there anything that you would say to like kids these days where it's like to get good at throwing and catching and moving and being an athlete that you did that kind of led to that?
Again, we're talking middle school. I mean, at that younger age
And,
still.
yeah, if you're thinking about like middle school, early
Yeah.
high school, maybe like
Yeah.
developmental years.
Yeah. So yeah, to your point. So we didn't have gyms like the one in you and I co-own Fast Twitch. We didn't have um, there wasn't any of that. It was basically in those days, you did what we talked about. You played with your siblings and or neighborhood kids. And you were outside having fun, and so when I wasn't playing with my brothers, I was gathering all the kids that in the neighborhood, and we just played. I mean, it was just fun. It wasn't forced. It wasn't coerced by my dad was a success. He had been a successful high school football player, but he wasn't pushing me and my brothers to be anything. Just we were just living in life and having fun. It was a fun experience, and it's something that came naturally. You just kind of do. And I think yeah. So that's always been a concern of mine is with my kids growing up and watching now. You guys raise the grandkids, and we talk about this together. I mean, it's like it's got to be fun. I mean, the kids got to enjoy it. So you can't feel like they're being forced by some overbearing father who's living his life through his child, which is not
Yeah,
healthy. But it was just fun to go do. So yeah, so I
yeah,
I was able to and I wanted to be an athlete, and so I practiced. I worked on learned how to catch the ball. I learned how to throw football. I could do both. I learned how to dribble. I mean, when I remember getting Pete Maravich back in my day was like this
yeah,
famous guard who just scored 60 points a game. So I think I remember getting a little book or something, and he had some things out and some drills that he did to learn how to. He was like an incredible dribbler in
yeah,
those days. So I'd go in the back, read his stuff, and then I'd practice all this stuff with dribbling. It was just, it was my dad, mom had to call us in for dinner. Like, where's Mark? Well, he's out back. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just something that was fun. And I think that's the biggest thing I'm concerned with young people today is that for whatever reason, it's important, I think, just to keep the game fun. Make it, make sure your kids are having fun what they're doing. And I mean, as we get in, that they do it on their own, that they're, that they just love what they're doing, whether,
Yeah.
it's a whole different deal. But I think that's really a missing element anymore is everything's so organized. It's got to be fun for the kids.
Yeah. No, I would agree because I guess if it's not fun, they're probably not gonna put the time in that's required because they're gonna find any other way to get out of it or it's just like I guess it's like anything you become good at, like you have to really
Yeah.
love to do it. Otherwise, you're probably not gonna allot the amount of time or make time for it or go do it. So, um, here's kind of a question off of that I think a lot of parents would ask in today's kind of landscape. Uh, because of I would say a little bit of the structure and individualized, like skilled sessions and kind of more the seriousness of it as a youngster, I do think there's like some of the skill level is pretty high. I think probably higher than it used to, but um, I think some things are lost, like just the knowledge of the game because they're not going to games as much, probably not into it. But they're really good at like playing quarterback, like doing drills, But when a rush comes and they don't understand certain routes and combinations and defenses and some of that stuff, but a lot of parents will see other kids and think, oh man, their skill level's so high, and they're in seventh or eighth grade, and their skill level, maybe even sixth grade, fifth grade, their skill level's so high, and then they look at their child and like, oh, we've just been kind of focusing on fun, uh, and I feel like they get pressured
Yeah.
into like
Great.
keeping up with others that seemingly have more skill, but then there's the whole puberty and it gets kind of messy. But I know like you started playing tackle football when you were a freshman, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Ninth grade. Yeah.
And you kind of messed around, but nothing super serious. It's like, what would you say to those parents and coaches and people that would be like, I'm getting left behind. Like
Yeah.
maybe I
Yeah.
need to be more
Yeah.
structured
It's a
more
really good
serious.
question because that's part of that is a challenge today in today's sports. I've watched you all go through that as parents, and seeing that, in this next generation. Um, yeah, so I think the game has to be fun. That the kid has to enjoy. You'll know if they really like sports or not. And I think it's important. Let me give a quick point. So I didn't play tackle football. I played basketball all the way through because basketball is not a big deal. But I know when I was about seventh grade, I begged my father
Oh,
to let me
really?
play tackle football, and he was like, "No, I don't want you to play tackle. You got your flag football team." I just begged him, and finally, him and my mom gave in. And it's a quick, it's just place to reminded me of this story is that, so we went out for this Pop Warner team, right? And because my neighborhood kids were playing Pop Warner, so we went to the beginnings and you weigh in and all this stuff, and all I do is I remember I was so excited because I was finally going to play tackle football and and the fact was but I told you I was taller and a little heavier than most people my age. So in those days, if you were bigger, you
Yeah.
played with the bigger kids. So I'll never forget. So we went to this park for the first practice and I was so excited. But the coach, so we all lined up. Coach, welcomed us and whatever, and then we started doing drills and things like forward. I mean, really simple things like forward rolls and backward stuff. And literally, like my parents set off in their car watching from the deal, and I went through. Frankly, it was hell for it was like hell for a year, a whole hour because I couldn't even do forward rolls or anything, and I was just so out of my league That basically, when I got out of that first practice, I came off the field and I think I was crying. I mean, that was kind of I guess I was a wuss. I don't know. I just remember saying, I don't know if I want to do this. And so my dad just had this little smile on his face, like, told you. And so that was it. And that was my, it was wise of him to give me a shot, but I didn't. So that's why I ended up only playing it until ninth grade when I got a little bit older. But, um, I think again, your body will begin to get, as a child, you got to let your kids grow. And as they're starting to mature, and if they love the game and they seem to have a passion for it. I always felt like, for me, like my dad as an example, my dad holding me back from playing, that story says I wasn't ready mentally to go play with the older
Yeah.
kids tackle football. But the fact that he held me back in wisdom, it kept me kind of at bay. And there was this desire as I kept getting older that I was hungry to get better, right? Like I was not just, I feel like anymore it's like we give our younger kids like everything they could imagine, at 7 years old,
So true.
and they're just all in, and they're, parents are just letting them do, hey, whatever you want to do, whatever, it's your world. We'll just do. We'll bend the boat. We'll bend the knee
Yeah.
to anything you want to do, son or daughter. And the fact is, I don't know that that's healthy. Not only for
Yeah.
family and time as family, whatever, but also I think there's a point what I try to do with my kids, and I think it worked for the most part. You could ask Lauren. I don't know. I Who's my second daughter, by the way, who you married, played great tennis player. I think what my goal was always to have the kids like hungry still to get better as they were getting into high school. Because that was kind of the goal, is that like as you get older, do you still love the game when you get into ninth, 10th grade? And when it starts to really matter, if you're going to play longer term, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
there's that deal. And so there's a lot of pressure now to jump in to play sports at an early age. Um, Time will tell, but I'll give you my opinion. I think that it's good and bad in certain ways. I mean, I think, unfortunately, I think in my day you played all kinds of sports, and I think there was a lot of athletic development that happened in playing multiple sports.
Totally.
And now we get into kind of make a decision at a very young age of what sport you're going to play, and that's good and all. And I think there's a pressure to do it, frankly, but I'm not so sure. And we found with fast twitch, in the training and development, the overuse of certain muscles in one sport, I don't think it's a bad idea to play multiple sports.
Yeah.
And I was just having this conversation with some upper level college people, coaches, and so and some of them, they're even finding they have an opinion of that, of whether it's more versatile, being more versatile and playing different sports is really not a bad way to go. But that we've gone so focused on it, so there's a lot of pressure. Um, I think it's really key as parents to know your kid well enough to not bend the pressure. Everybody's at a different place at a different age development. I go to some of the games watching. There's just certain kids that are just, you could just tell they're just they're just ready. I'll give you this. So when I got to Edison High School so we moved from LA in the mid '70s to Huntington Beach, and at that time the Huntington Beach area was exploding with kids moving. I mean, it was just a lot of migration to Huntington in those days, and Orange County, frankly, from LA, and so
Yeah.
the schools were huge. Edison had like 4,500 kids or something. It was crazy how big it was. Um, and just again, as I was going there, I couldn't wait to play football. I had gotten to the place where it was just like that was football and basketball. I was going to go out for it. So it was like it was all that desire was now coming to fruition, to where I had to start. It was going to be fun. I was going to play organized football, and I feel like that was a really good spot to be at the time.
Yeah.
Just being hungry that way. That I think I was set up for being successful. I think helped
So
me.
it's almost like the way that I hear it a little bit is like, yeah, the skill level might be higher in sixth and seventh grade. You might be dominant, but you start to be like almost like, well, because like right now people will go play basketball or baseball year round, or like they'll go almost every weekend, they'll play 4 or 5 games. And so, yeah, you can develop certain skill level that's just going to be higher than someone who hasn't possibly. But then it just ends up being almost like a job, and there's no then they get to freshman year and their hunger, it's been completely satisfied with what they've done.
Yeah.
And so you might what you get from skill level from just playing so many hours, it can really pull from motivation and drive and hunger, which ultimately, if you're looking to play on past high school or even just have a really good high school experience, that's what I always advocate for, is that good high school
Yeah.
experience.
That's
Don't
what
have to
and
be
that's,
at
yeah.
college or the NFL. It draws from that so much, and I know, people that were like unbelievable, like I was one of the better athletes on the island, but I had a couple of people that were better than me at football, and like they didn't ever even play in high school because they, I don't know, for whatever reason, but like kind of maturity plays a role in that. And we talked about, going through puberty and being an
Yeah.
early bloomer and all that. But, even talking with Adam, about some of the guys that were really good in Pop Warner, didn't even make the varsity team. So that's a
Yeah.
that's a super good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. So when I got to Edison, that was a point I was going to make, and I kind of lost track of my thoughts there. But I think my point was going to is, and you just nailed it, is that when I showed up at Edison, there was for the freshman football team that first summer, there were guys that were freshmen like me, and I was a young fresh. I was a September kid, so I was young. And this is another area, like everybody's holding back now. So in the old day, like I would even be allowed to play on some teams now because I was, what was I, 13 as a freshman. I mean, so I was super young as a September child. And the guys on the team. I mean, there's some guys on the team that were already shaving. I mean, I wasn't even close to. I mean, I was so immature and so young, just skinny, going through an awkward stage of puberty. That at Edison, they had two freshman teams. They had the green team and the gold team. The green team was the really good players, and the gold team was the second rated. It was sort of, so it was like and I was like convinced I could make the green team, but I didn't because frankly the other kids were better. They'd played Pop Warner football, like I quit on. They didn't. They were the kids that were all there, and so but I got to play quarterback on the gold team. And long story short, as time went on, a lot of those same kids, and you just made the point, a lot of those same kids were pretty much done by the time we got to junior and senior year, when I was had frankly had a growth spurt and began to really excel in the game. And so even though I started off kind of behind, those years of puberty, and actually also here's the other thing. The other thing is like not being the starter and the big time guy as a freshman kept me hungry because I wanted to prove myself. Right, you did too. Like it kept me, again. It was part of that staying at bay, not like. I didn't get everything I wanted right at first, so I stayed hungry because I loved the game. I wanted to play. I was hungry then to do the extra work to get better. And then as my body kind of all came together, it worked out by the end of high school. So, you know what I'm saying? So that's what you're saying. So there's that, it's hard. It's like every kid's different. And for parents, to watch that and to understand it, it takes wisdom and sort of just really keeping a close eye on things.
Well, because I would say the opposite of that. So I feel like there's like this really good place to be as you're going through sports in like earlier, because there's also, like, to your point, like what your dad was really wise about was like knowing you and knowing what was out there, because like you can also put your kid in a situation that just crushes their confidence,
Yeah.
and it's not because they're not a good like athlete. It's because the kids, it's like they're on steroids because they've hit puberty and you haven't. So it's like a completely, so if you get into a bad situation, and as a kid it can be the
Great
other way,
point.
it just could crush their confidence.
Yeah.
So I think there's like this really nice sweet spot, where you're still hungry, but you're having some success in some
Yeah.
areas, but it's not all given to you. Like,
Yeah,
so
no, you're right. And because of the mental part, we're talking physical when you're a kid, puberty, the whole bit, your body's changing. But your point is like the mental aspect of the game too, that fear of failure where you make that big mistake, or, you know, you don't please your father and you never can because he's so hard on you. It's like,
yeah,
why do I want to do this? Like, this
yeah,
sucks. Like, this is no fun. I don't like the pressure, blah, blah. But to keep it, like I said, keeping it, um, enjoyable for the child, and then keep allowing them to determine how deep they want to dig in. And so that's, I think my parents did a nice job with that. That's what we try to do with, our five, and, watching you guys, all my incredible in-law kids, son-in-laws and one daughter-in-law, all accomplished athletes. And it's interesting to see that you guys all kind of did the same thing, and your parents did. So I think I don't know, I've seen success there, and I've experienced a lot of levels of football. And I can say, like, it doesn't, just because you're not the greatest eighth grader or seventh grader doesn't mean like your time's over. I got tons. I could give you tons of stories of guys that I played with in the NFL who that was true. I know
yeah.
a guy who played 12 years in the NFL and never played football in until he was at Golden West College, and he was a tackle. It's crazy.
That's a
Glenn
lot.
Parker's his name, and I haven't seen him play in a long time, but he didn't even go. He would have gone to Edison and been but he didn't even play till he got to Golden West College, and then played like 10 years for the Buffalo Bills. I mean,
Dude,
so you just don't know what's going to happen.
that's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I
So
think I think that right there is something that is like a lot of kids need to hear, because all they hear is like, you're not good enough. You're not, you got to be better. You're not good enough. And it's just like, it's just like a lot to handle as a kid. And it's like so far from what the reality and truth is with a lot of higher level athletes. Because
yeah,
I have the same. I could name a few people too that have just the same situation. Um, so I think there's like that, just an intense pressure that's put on a lot of kids. And quite frankly, I think it's a lot of ego from the parents. They like to hear, club coaches recruit their kid to come play for their club,
yeah,
and in order to play for their club, now they're playing all year round. Or so it's gotten kind of gross.
yeah. It's
But
man, there's a lot. We
yeah,
could talk about this all day. I've got so many. I mean, there's just so many examples of watching parents just get absolutely out of control. And we talked, I mean, I made a brief, but it's like, I think it's really sad to watch parents who, no matter the degree of their success in their sports at the same age, but it's really sad, and it's so clear when a parent is trying to live through their kid and putting that pressure on their kid, like, yeah. And I don't want to get, I mean, I don't, and I know there's parents listening to this, but man, if you're a parent, and my advice is, if you're a parent living through, your dreams and goals through your children and through your young, it's man, you better check yourself at the door, because it's just like, let them experience, let them have their day. You had your day. I mean, I had my day,
yeah,
and I was a success. I mean, you would say that, I played 8 years in the NFL. I had a long career. Wasn't all great. I had to battle through a lot of things, but people say, "Oh, you got to live the dream." Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but but I didn't accomplish everything I wanted to accomplish, even at that level. It's hard for many people to do it. Most NFL or professional athletes go out not having accomplished all their goals and dreams. I mean, it sounds crazy, but
yeah,
most
totally.
of them go out. Most of them go out. Um, uh, with an injury. I mean, there's very few people. I mean, maybe, I mean, literally, like, I don't even, Peyton Manning, maybe. There's certain, I mean, there's certain people that go out that are able to choose when they go out. Most athletes go out having been rejected or cut or injured, right? So it's like, let them have their day as a parent. Let them go through it. Enjoy the process. Be encouraging. Give them everything they need to success, but don't force your thing on it. And I think it's one of the things that I see from parents. The other thing that's important, I know you're going to get into this on at some point this morning or today in this podcast, is the role of coaches.
Mm.
Um, Man, that's a big, big job. Coaching is an incredible job, and if you get the wrong coach at the wrong time, it can destroy your dream. I have a daughter, one of my daughters, not the one you're married to, but Melissa was she loved basketball. I just quote this quick story. She loved basketball, and she would go out every day, just like we talked about. And I would go out with her. We have a little basketball court out in the front yard, in our front driveway. And man, I didn't have to ask her to go out. She just loved basketball. She was a good tennis player, great athlete. Ended up being really played the Chapman tennis, but her first love was basketball. We played all the time. Her and I would go one on one, and all these things, right? It was just like I said, try to set her up for success. And unfortunately, early in her career, one of her first experiences to start really getting more active, as finally I let her kind of go to the next level, is she just had a coach that was absolutely horrible. And literally within weeks, and I was so upset at myself for this, for letting that, but within weeks, her desire to play basketball kind of went away. It pretty much went away. And it was
Yeah.
just that quick, and how quickly a coach, even with all my time, I couldn't ever get her back to think about wanting to play basketball. I think she would have been a great player. So anyway, all that to say is that, just because, just because you have a club team and, blah, 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 doesn't mean that the people that are coaching your kid is really very good at it. They
Yeah.
may know some X's and O's and some stuff, but if they can really discourage a kid really quick by their language, by their, yeah, for all kinds of reasons. And so I'm a pretty stickler on that too. I think aside from parents in our culture today, um, I think coaches are some of the most influential people in our culture today, and they're
Totally.
impacting kids that in ways that they don't even know. Um,
Yeah.
and to that point, so I'd ask you a question. So do you remember, Josh? Do you remember teacher, your English freshman English teacher's name, at Edison, or or in I'm sorry, Orcas Island. I mean, do you remember some of those those teachers?
Very vaguely.
But you
Yeah.
probably remember a coach's name. My
Oh yeah.
guess is you remember your coach's name.
Yeah.
I
Denny
know I
Randall.
did. So because of how influential they are. So that's a big role, and make sure you keep your eyes on that situation for your. That's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Well, how would you? Yeah. That's a that's that's super. You're so right on that, and it's hard
It's hard.
to navigate which are the good ones.
Yeah, it's
Um,
hard, man. It's hard. A lot of those guys, I mean, they're in it for again, they're living through the kids that they're coaching. There's a pride, like is it about them or is it about the kids, right? I mean, is it they're winning? Like, I'm a good coach. I don't know. It's just a lot involved, and we're not going to answer that question, but
no,
that's a big deal.
and a lot of it, like you said, it's a parent, you know, understanding where your kid is at the time,
Yeah,
asking some of the right questions. And that's honestly something that, in the future on a podcast is to have some coaches kind of maybe on this too, to kind of talk through some of that stuff. And I know there's some good resources out there like 3D coaching, which kind of talks about, like, I'm sure there's some really good resources that we can share with people about, some good questions to ask
yeah,
coaches and to be able to spot one, and kind of spot a bad one, probably
yeah.
more so. Um, but kind of moving into the last part of our conversation, how do you think, because of the time requirements, and uh, even if you are someone that plays multiple sports, and if you do have a bigger family, like I have 4 kids, you had 5. There's people that really value, sports aren't everything.
Yeah,
Sometimes it seems like they are to some people, and it's hard. You can get caught up in it, but it really isn't. And there obviously needs to be a lot of lessons that sports teach you that carry on through a lot of things. But so those people that are having a hard time balancing family relationships, family time, but also, pursuing their sport and training at Fast Twitch. And you did it with 5 kids. So is there any tidbits or advice you would share to parents who can kind of help navigate family in sports and the competitive nature that we live in Orange County and in our society?
Yeah, wow, that's a big question, bro. There's a lot. There's a lot in there. Yeah, tough to navigate. There's a lot of demand in regards to time for these kids. Again, at a young age, uh, deciding whether you're going to play club sports and when you're going to play and all these things. Man, it can really tax parents. So again, there's just a lot of pressure involved in that. I think I would say that a couple of things. One is don't miss. It's hard. So now I'm a grandpa. I'm 61. I got your 4 grandkid. I got another. I'm gonna have 17 grandkids here soon, right? And I'm just like amazed at how fast time has gone. It's like it's crazy. Um, and my wife Jana, your mother-in-law, and we've been married 41 years, and it's just like we've been in Huntington for all that time, and it's love the community, everything. It's great, but it's amazing how fast time goes, and and uh, and I enjoyed all the sports and all that stuff. It was incredible, but again, I think it's the quality of time with your kids. It's you just don't ever get it back. You don't. It goes and it just doesn't come back. I mean, every day is a new day. Kids are growing up, and by the time they hit 18, 20 years old, they're on their way, man. And it's like they just don't come back. So for parents, I think it's really important to be active with your kids and enjoy the time because it goes by so quickly. But then I think you have to prioritize what's really important, your value, what you value. For me and for my wife, I mean, we value our faith. We're Christians. We both came to Christ as in high school, and Jesus became a real important part of my life back then, spiritually, and we tried to raise our kids, having a faith in as well, and tell them that there's a God who loves them and has a plan for their life, and we read the Bible and not ashamed of it because it's frankly for me, I mean, it's been a cornerstone or a rock in my life, and so um, all the craziness of all this world, for me, my faith in Christ has really been, like Matthew chapter 7 says, it's been a rock in a life is turbulent, man. The storms come, things happen, but when you're living for God and trying to live by His word, I mean, it's solid in there. So for us, I mean, it was always important to try, and it's impossible anymore because you try to just make sure you have those quality times of doing church on Sundays or Saturday nights, whatever. I mean, making sure that we still had our family time and we
Mm-hmm.
weren't just always doing sports. And so you don't have to have you know you don't have to be a Christian or any kind of religion to do that, but it's making it a priority what you value. And at the end of the day, is looking forward, going in your mind, going forward 10, 20 years and looking backwards at this time and saying, so what do we want to look like in 10 years? And now how does that change what we're doing today?
Yeah.
Because for most kids, okay, let's face fact, the reality of the statistics, most kids, you know, very few of them will get to college and play sports, and very few will get professionally and play sports. So if that's true, and if that's the ultimate goal, what is the goal? Why are you playing sports? What are you learning from it as a family? What can you gain, and what fun can it be as a
Yeah.
group? I think you got to look at it that way, in a different way, because it's just reality. Time goes by quick. So I guess I'm at a place in my life where I'm realizing that and valuing the fact that I feel like we made some good decisions. We weren't perfect, for sure. I mean, we made lots of mistakes, but I don't have a ton of regrets in the way things worked out for my kids and in their sports. And none of them played pros. They never went, But I think they all enjoyed playing sports, and we have incredible memories of just as a family enjoying their games and just those times. A lot of fun. So again, back to the for like it's just value your time now as a parent and enjoy it. Don't make it so dang tough. It's not as hard as we think it is. And I mean, I think that yeah, and back to so I don't know if we're wrapping this up or what. I guess I would say so years ago. So when I got out of football, um, and I want to talk a little bit about the gym and training real quick because I think this is an important part in the sense of you and I are both involved with fast twitch and in 19 so it's a longer story, but another partner of ours, Tommy Knox, who's a chiropractor, him and I started this gym in 1997, and we've been around for a long time. But both of us, when we started it, and you came in and really taken it to new levels. But I think it's because of is that we all believe that we're not trying to just be about money and making money on that, but we really care about kids. And the fact is that we want to, at Fast Twitch, be a positive influence on them. And what has happened, and you and I didn't talk about it, but I've watched in my lifetime, as we were talking about, when I got to Edison High School, I mean, lifting and training in sports was so archaic. I mean, compared to, I mean, this was even the 70s. It wasn't that long ago. I mean, really, it's not that long ago, but,
Yeah.
we did pretty much bench press, squats off of a bench, no, literally bounce, you could bounce off the bench and then, maybe a power clean or something and, curls, just so you look good at the beach. I mean, it was like, and then for our training outside, we always just ran, sprints and although it was good, but the fact is that as I know, as I went through my career, the the quality of the training became so much better. And so in the late 90s, there was some stuff where there was being taught and learned that if you train at higher speeds, and developing the fast twitch muscles to get more explosive. I was
Mhm.
a really good player. I mean, I was good at the game, but I never what I regret in training is I never was training to get more explosive. And I think now as I watch young as the athletes, even the NFL now, I mean, the guys are less bulky, which was a big deal for us in my day. They might be even. I don't know if they're probably stronger still, but I don't even know if but they're very athletic, and they do
Mhm.
athletic movements and they train athletically, which
Mhm.
was a little bit. It was just different than when I came through, and so that was our goal for Fast Twitch is to kind of bring that to the younger kids because, frankly, they're not getting that kind of training uh, we used to have full time PE coaches, at Edison High School. They don't have that stuff anymore. I mean, I don't know if it was there when you went through Edison, 20 years later. I mean, there was just there was really like, hey, go in there and, do your bench, do your day kind of deal. And there was it wasn't their fault. They just don't have the people. And
Yeah.
so that's why we started this gym. And I think it's, for us, it's more about, it's training well, teaching them really lifelong how to train. That'll be something they can use all their life, not just in their sport, right? I mean, that's important. And then also kind of the holistic about their mind and enjoying trying to make it a fun atmosphere where they enjoy it. It's a place where they can go train and like the people that actually care about them.
Mhm.
Those are all things that are really important to us at the gym, and you've done a nice job with that. So, anyway, I think that, and we've just been kind of trying to be a counter. That was the goal of Fasters, to be a counter to sort of the culture and still what's happening out there today. So, anyway, I just have to throw that in because I think that's really important. It's part of what I'm talking about is value the kids and the people more than just the athletic ability and the final results. Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with results, dude, but if your kid is incredible athlete and has all this success, but they're an absolute disaster in their personal life and they're, doing drugs and all that. Cause, and again, that's why I brought up the faith is, I think that there's so much, I got my rock and in Christ. And then I was able from there to grow. And I just I mean, I don't have any regrets. I think it's so important to find out what that is for you and then to build off of it. It's really important. Does that make sense?
Oh man, that's powerful. I think there's just so many good things about what you said, and for
That's
me,
the thing.
ultimately, I think what you said about uh, kind of forward thinking and thinking about what you want for your family um, after sports and the relationships that you want with your kids after sports and want them and their relationships that come through sports to be about. I think you got to forward think about that and reverse engineer it a little bit
Yeah,
and think
exactly.
beyond.
Great.
It's okay to say no to a weekend of games,
It is.
to spend a weekend at the beach, or make sure that like everybody. I think we talked about this too in the value of having dinner together as a family.
Wow. Yeah.
At least you can't do it every night, but at least a few times a week. So there's some really practicality in doing it, and it's not. I think people think that by doing those things, it's going to detract from this professional athlete they're creating, but that's just not true.
Not
And
true.
I think from everything you've said, um, there's countless examples that, if anything, in my opinion, it would enhance that their ability to play longer if they had the ability to, but it would also enhance and create winning relationships with your kids and those that they come in contact with. So, such a great conversation. I know we could probably talk about it forever,
Yeah.
and maybe we'll do a part two. But I thank you for your time
Thank you,
jumping
Josh. You
on.
did a great job, and thanks for doing such a good job with my grandkids, dude. It's fun. I mean, because you and Lauren, and I know Jessica and Adam, our two oldest daughters. And then the other ones are kind of younger still right now. But you guys all got the kids at that time, and you're making some tough decisions. Um,
Mhm.
I know it's harder. It's clearly harder than it was even when we were raising our kids. I mean, having to decide, will you play sports on a Sunday? Should you do that or be able to get to church? And I know I watch you. You guys get to church on Saturday nights, or you make some other options, and you
Yeah.
just I mean, I think, and you just made the greatest point I didn't think about is like, and I had forgotten about this, how important it is to spend time together as a family. And unfortunately, in our culture today, the pace at which we play and the pace at which there's a lot of positives, but there's been a lot of negatives to it where
Mhm.
families aren't eating meals together, which
Mhm.
is where some of looking back in my as the kids were growing up, those are some of the greatest memories of the conversations around a dinner table.
Yeah,
And
that's so true.
they've done studies on this actually and found how healthy kids can be, how much healthier they are having just eating dinner together. That sounds crazy, but these are old, boring old things that
Yeah.
the old people used to do, but they still work today. So you made a great point. I just want to
The
emphasize.
the
Absolutely.
best conversations, the funniest,
Oh
best
my gosh.
conversations at dinner.
I could
I
tell
agree.
stories about when you came up and Lauren, yeah. So
Yeah, there you go. We're not
Well,
there
bad
yet.
boy.
But,
But that's important. It's just important. Good times. So part of that value, things that as a parent you'll never regret, and your parent and your kids won't either. I think they
yeah,
enjoyed it as well.
100%.
All right,
Well,
bro.
thank you. I
We'll
will
talk again.
see you soon.
This was fun.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dad.